Hospital porters, pride and dignity stop the New World Order. Welcome to Herpanwo TV. I'm in Oxford, sunny Oxford. Well, it's not so sunny at the moment. It's very quiet as well. All these shops are shut and everything like that. But I'm just outside Oriel College in Oxford. Now, yesterday there was a massive demonstration here by various groups under the shadow of anti-fascists, Antifa and Black Lives Matter. And the reason was to try and do away with this here. You see this statue up here? That statue there, the statue of Cecil John Rhodes. Now, he was, the reason is that statue's been there since about 1902, I think, when he died. And it's there. He was one of the patrons of the college. I'm just going to go somewhere quieter because despite the fact we're in the lockdown, it's still quite busy and quite noisy. So we're just going to head, see, we've got a protest today. So, I'm going now Oriel Street. I'm going to go around the other side of Oriel College to Oriel Square, just because it's a little bit quiet there. But this is a big local issue that has come up again and again and again in this particular city. That is that that statue there should be disposed of. It should be taken down. It has no place in today's. I believe it. There are ducks in the middle of the street. Who'd have thought it? You don't often get that. Hey, ducks. Yeah. This has been running for a couple of years. In fact, if you read Herpanwo Voice, you'll know that I actually made a post on Herpanwo Voice about 2 years ago related to the matter of the Rhodes Statue. It's been an ongoing problem for a number of years now. In fact, 2 years ago, a campaign began to remove the statue of Rhodes from Oriel College, and it started at the time in response to an incident in the United States where the State House of Georgia, the Confederate battle flag was taken down from the government buildings. This is the diagonal red and blue flag with the diagonal stripes, the diagonal cross and stars on it. Now in Britain it's not really a big deal because we don't really understand these issues to do with internal American politics. I certainly see the Confederate battle flag as much as a symbol of the United States as the stars and stripes. But this was very contentious within the United States. Indeed, this led to the destruction of several statues in the southern United States in what used to be the Confederacy. These were heroes such as Robert E. Lee and people like that who had represented the rebels within the American Civil War in the mid-19th century. Now, gosh, you may recognise this actually, this lovely little lane here. This is Oriel Square, and there's that lovely. You see that there? That's beautiful, isn't it? You normally see this at night time because when I go to Skeptics in the pub, I often go this way. The fact is that the statues were considered essentially unclean according to modern ethical standards because for them the Confederacy stood for slavery. Now, as a matter of fact, I think it was a misunderstanding of the situation, which I'll probably explore in more detail in a video that's coming soon, probably my next video. But the immediate repercussions for this was that here in Oxford, a campaign immediately began to remove Cecil Rhodes' statue. And this was partly to do with the issue in the States, but also it's to do with something that happened in South Africa, where in Cape Town University, students successfully had the statue of Rhodes removed from there, even though he was a patron of that university as well, because he was actually Prime Minister of what was then the Cape Province, which later became the Republic of South Africa. But Rhodes himself, I mean, Cecil Rhodes, there was a BBC drama called Rhodes, which was all about his life story, which was surprisingly good actually for the BBC, surprisingly fair. You don't normally get that kind of thing from the BBC. But it was very sort of like, it treated him compassionately. Because in left-wing circles, he's kind of a bête noire, if you know what I mean. He's kind of a monster, he's kind of this monster that's the epitome of sort of right-wing evil. And so that's why I think why they did it. That's why this all kicked off, I think. I have here someone's keep Rhodes safe, don't erase history. Okay.
This chap turned up outside the door of Oriel College with this placard that you see here, and he didn't want to be filmed, he didn't want to answer any questions, but well done for him to turning up. He obviously has guts. It's not easy to do that sort of thing. I found it very difficult when I did my little rebellion in Trump on Britain, that video I made. So well done him. I think he did a good job telling the other side of the story. I'm glad someone is willing to do it and not be intimidated into silence.
So who was Cecil Rhodes? Well, he actually was. He was a student here, and later on became one of the, like I said, a patron of Oriel College. And he was he started off as an explorer, an adventurer, and pretty soon carried out his own what can only be described as independent and even imperialistic expansions into areas, especially southern Africa. And he was this. I suppose he's like the BBC treated him quite surprisingly fairly, actually. As I said, because he's this demon. He's regarded as this demon. But in a sense, he was a person who believed in a one-world government. He was a very early expression of the kind of Henry Kissinger, George Soros type of person, who believed that there should be a single world government based on the British Empire. The British Empire he regarded essentially as a model for that, for an independent, for an international authority to which nation states would be subordinate. I do recommend The Reptilian Agenda by David Icke. He's and a very, very interesting, very long interview he did with this South African Zulu shaman, who talked about some of the methods that Rhodes would use, which were very similar actually to the ones that are used by the Illuminati agents of the modern world. For example, various types of tricks, dirty tricks, strategies such as getting one tribe to fight another, being very nice one moment and being friendly, holding your hand out and smiling and greeting and taking part in ceremonies with local chieftains, the next moment crushing them brutally and killing them mercilessly. So yeah, Rhodes was a sort of typical one-worlder. Typical was. Now what happened was, for this moment, for this region, he's seen as a symbol of, kind of in South Africa, as symbolising the ancien regime of apartheid. And the campaign was actually started by a South African student here. A South African student started the campaign. His name is Nkozo Kwabi. Sorry if I mispronounced that. But he's a student at Keble College, and he's a Rhodes Scholar. That's the irony of it. He's a Rhodes Scholar, and he's only studying Oxford at all because of the generosity of the Rhodes Mandela Trust. And I'll put a link in the description box to my video about Rhodes House, which gives you a bit more background into this situation, gives you a little bit more background into what it all means. It's all about it's like he's biting the hand that feeds him, if you know what I mean. What happened was, when Rhodes died, he was very wealthy, and in 1902, when he passed away, in his will he left all his money to fund Rhodes scholarships. Now this is basically he put them into various trust funds and various bought shares in various places like that, and various hedge funds and things like that, to make sure that money essentially was of infinite supply. And the purpose was he would bring people from all over the world to study here at Oxford, who he thought were the kind of people who could fulfil his dream of one world government based on the British Empire. And Mr. Kwame, what's his name? Pardon me. Yeah, young Mr. Kwabi is one of those people. He's considered the right kind of material by the Rhodes Scholarship, the Rhodes Trust Fund. I mean, you have to go for an interview and things like Richard Dolan actually was shortlisted for a Rhodes Scholarship, but he didn't get it. Anyway, so I mean, the thing about it is, so Cecil Rhodes, I mean, you probably gathered by now, Cecil Rhodes is not someone that I admire. He's not someone I consider that should be commemorated and lauded. Definitely not. His grave, I mean, interesting, when he was buried, when he died, everyone was saying that he should be buried in Christchurch, just the big cathedral, just up the road, Oxford's big cathedral, which is also the chapel of Christchurch College. a lot of people saying that. I'll go here, but it's a bit raining a bit now. And and also some people even saying he should be buried at Westminster Abbey. But he chose instead to be buried in a grave out in the open at the Matopo Hills, or Matopo Mountain, Madobo Mountains, as Credo Mutwa calls them. This mountain of this mountain range, a beauty spot as well in Zimbabwe, which is considered sacred to the old Mashona Empire, which is one of the societies that he conquered during his imperialistic expansion. Now, so it's understandable. Why would you want to laud someone like that? But why would you also, if I don't think he's a good guy, what do I think about disposing of his statues? Well, I'm very much against it. I'm very much against of removing the statue of Cecil Rhodes. Oh, why is that, Ben? Why is that? I'll explain. We've had a spate of, at the time I'm filming this, we've had a spate of riots around the world, mostly in the United States, but there's been a few in Britain as well. And that is people running around town, destroying things wantonly. As a result, this was triggered supposedly by the murder of George Floyd, this man in Minneapolis who was killed by a policeman, who's now facing second-degree murder charges. But obviously, there's more to it than that. Obviously, that was simply the, in a sense, the trigger event for what is a very, very well-funded, well-organised campaign of violence. And indeed, this was something that was predicted a long time ago, because I think it was on Infowars.com. They discovered there was a group of people who were saying, you know, if Bernie Sanders doesn't get the nomination for the US presidency, they would destroy every town in the States, and it was organised on a national level. Indeed it was. But I think I'll save the details of that for my upcoming video, which I think is, I'll go into more details on that, because it'll probably be my next video actually, because I'm going to go into more details on some of these issues. But what they've been doing is, these people, they have been defacing statues and destroying several. They destroyed, most famously, a famous statue of Edward Coulson. Now, he was a 17th century merchant who essentially funded and created a lot of what we today the city of Bristol. But the fact of the matter is, and it's a sad fact, but it's true, that a lot of that money came from the slave trade. And so they, in a sense, Bristol, you know, his statue was destroyed. They rolled it along the streets. They tugged it down with chains, just like they did with the Confederate statues in the States, and they dumped it into the harbour of Bristol. It's just lying on the bed of the harbour. Apparently, someone's going to try and get it out. Now, it's a sad fact, you know, but I mean that slavery is a part of history. It's something that happened. It's something that cannot be changed because it's in the past. The past cannot be changed. The future is open to anything physically possible we can put into it. We can put onto it. Things are not inevitable in the future. Things are absolutely unchangeable in the past. In the many worlds hypothesis, you can go back in time and change things. You know, Back to the Future style. You know, that doesn't work within our timeline. It's the laws of physics prohibit it. Yeah, all we hear about at the moment is slavery. All we hear about is slavery, and it's very selective the way it's portrayed. For example, there's a bit of rainwater on the lens. It's very selective, indeed. For example, there's a statue at a museum in Vienna, which was by a particular famous Italian sculptor. It's in bronze, and it's called Arab Slave Trader, and it shows that an Arab with a slave, like a naked white woman, sort of crouching at his feet, in chains. Obviously, the wares in some slave market. Do you know how many calls there have been to remove that statue? 0. You guessed it. Not one. Not one single person has called for that statue to be removed. And you've got to ask yourself, why? Why is that? And this is all to do with cultural Marxism. These protests you're seeing here, as Trump has said, and many, many other people have said, have nothing to do with the murder of George Floyd. It's not about seeking justice for George Floyd. His killers are being prosecuted for second-degree murder. There's absolutely no doubt. It was all filmed, and indeed, action is being taken. It's not about that at all. I don't think a lot of them care. This was just the excuse for the people who organised this riot, the riots, to do what they did. And indeed, it was organised. It was organised, as I'll explain in more detail in the next video. But this video is primarily about the morality of having images of people in history we don't particularly like, or not particularly reputable. Edward Colson was a product of the age he lived in the 17th century. There was nothing particularly immoral about slavery. Nothing was considered immoral about slavery. Slavery went on. It went on all over the world. Various people did it. There was the slave trade from Africa, with the transatlantic slave trade between the Caribbean, North America, Europe, and Africa, which was the work of both white people and Africans themselves, I should point out. Robert Mugabe, the late and unlamented president of Zimbabwe, made his family fortune through the slave trade as well, but I don't think, for some reason, the protesters don't seem to be too bothered about that. And the aforementioned slave trade in the Middle East, the fact that the Ottoman Empire, the Turks, a bit later on in the 19th century, took huge numbers of slaves from Africa, long after the Europeans and the North Americans had stopped. And again, this is what I mean by being selective. It seems to be that the people are protesting, not protesting against slavery, they're protesting against white people engaging in slavery in the past. That's what they're angry about. They're angry about that. Now, I do wonder why that is. Because, I mean, obviously the Illuminati don't, despite, I mean, this is what the alt-right get wrong. They say, oh, this is all about what? It's all about destroying white people. It's all about exterminating white people. There's a white genocide. And indeed, on one level, obviously there is. But is it because the Illuminati just don't like white people for some reason? They like everyone else? The answer is no. I think the Illuminati regard all people, black or white, gay or straight, man or woman, as another species of farm animal. If it seems they are favouring non-white people over white people, then it's a strategic act. It's not because they don't like white people, unless, as some people claim, there's something about the white biospirit which is antithetical to the New World Order, and I discussed that in a previous video. But the idea of taking down statues of any kind, I am opposed to. And I would say this about if anyone tried to remove the Karl Marx memorial in Highgate Cemetery, I would say exactly the same. I'd say exactly the same thing. There's a kind of year zero feel to it. Do you know what I mean? Year zero is something that refers to Cambodia, which Pol Pot, the man who imposed a harsh socialist regime in Cambodia, said that this is year zero. This is the beginning of a new age. We're going to completely destroy the past and start again with something artificial. And indeed, this is not unlike what Mao Zedong said in China during the Cultural Revolution, that everything from the past has to be destroyed and broken down so something new can be built out of it. And this is totally and utterly within the tenets of cultural Marxism. And I'm against it. As I said, I'm against if the founder of the faith himself, Karl Marx, if anyone tried to take down his memorial, one of the biggest New World Order tools who ever was born, I would defend that statue. I would defend it. I would say, do not remove that statue. I would, really would. It's ironic, you know, because I mean, as you see, there's no protesters here today except that one guy doing the counter-protest. And there's only one guy there doing a counter-protest. And one of the banners yesterday I saw on the news said, "Make Rhodes history." As in, you know this catchphrase, make poverty history, make this history, make Rhodes history. Well, Rhodes is history. That's the point. He is. You can't get away from. You can't make Cecil Rhodes cease to exist because he died 118 years ago. Do you know that in St. Petersburg, there's a railway station. Now, the famous railway station was where Vladimir Lenin arrived in 1917 at the revolution. He had a grand arrival on a train. It's quite famous there. And when they rebuilt the station in the 1960s, the Soviets put up a statue of Lenin in the forecourt. And you know what? We're now in the 4th decade of the post-Cold War era. Yet that statue is still there. The Russians have not made the mistake that we have. Or indeed the Germans have with Hitler. They haven't tried to bury their history and forget about it. It's a catchphrase, you know, but those who what's the word? Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it. Who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So should that statue of Lenin be removed from St. Petersburg? And there's lots of statues of Lenin in Russia today. Should they all be removed? In fact, the bloke's body is in a damn mausoleum. It's been embalmed and put on this public display in a mausoleum. Should these things be moved? Well, in the case of the body, I would say possibly yes, because it's actually a little bit worse for wear after almost 100 years since he died. It's actually a little bit worse for wear, as you'd expect. At some point, I think they're just going to have to bury him. But should the statues of Lenin be removed from Russia? No. Absolutely not. So I'm not biased here. I mean, as you know, I'm not really a kind of left-wing person. I wouldn't describe myself as right-wing, even though probably a lot of other people would. But I do not think, really do not think that those statues should be removed. I really, really don't. And it's getting awful now. These mobs. I mean, I'll say more about this in the next video. But these mobs are just being allowed to rampage, allowed basically to raise Cain in every city centre. And people have noticed the police are not really stopping them. What the police are doing is basically just containing the area and letting them get on with it. And there's this awful ritual of kneeling. Now, this kneeling thing was started by Colin Kaepernick, who was an American footballer, as a protest to what he saw as the racism of the United States, which indeed certainly is the case in the past. And indeed, I'll cover that more in the next video, or probably in the next video, a near future video. But this has now gone on to the point where it's now being used basically in a different way now. What's happening is you see white people getting down on their knees, white people being asked to kneel by mobs. And I mean, when I say asked to, these thugs, I mean, I talked about this on the Mindset podcast. There's this video of these thugs going up to a young woman walking along a pavement on her own in an empty street, and they go up to her and say, "Excuse me, we're Black Lives Matter, could you please kneel down because you got apologise and kneel down for your white privilege." And you can see, like, there's this young woman all on her own, and there's these big guys all around her. There's more than one of them. And now, if it was me, I'd refuse. I'd say, bugger off, no way. I'm not going to kneel down. I don't have white privilege, because there's no such thing as white privilege. It's a cultural Marxist delusion. But I'm a big, ugly ex-hospital porter, aren't I? What choice did she have but to comply? So this kind of horrible bullying seems to be going on a lot. And I mean, it was awful, actually, because there was some news footage of a load of people in that very street I was in just now, the High Street, outside Oriel College, kneeling down, the whole road, because they'd obviously closed the road for this protest. They were all kneeling down, all the white people were kneeling down. And there was one guy standing. It was amazing. There was one guy standing, and you could see him over the heads of all the crowd. And that one guy was Peter Hitchens. I recognised him immediately. He's a guy who lives around here. Now, I've given him a lot of stick, haven't I? I mean, because of his defeatism, because of his pessimism and his damn nihilism. It's really getting on my nerves. But, you know, I really thought, well done, Peter. Well done for not kneeling. You were not going to kneel. You do not have to kneel. I mean, I'm not a white supremacist. I don't believe that white people should be supreme, but neither are we inferior, and we should not bow down. We should not kneel down because of the colour of our skin. As Muhammad Ali said, hating someone else because of the colour of their skin is wrong, full stop. It doesn't matter who's doing the hating and who is being hated. It is just wrong. But that's not the way things are nowadays, is it, with cultural Marxism? And I'll say more about that in the upcoming video. One question is, if this is organised, I mean, it was organised. I mean, builders' yards were receiving orders of bricks, and these bricks were being sort of delivered to various strategic spots in various countries around various countries and various cities, and for the mobs to pick up, the Antifa mobs. Why? Well, it could be because it's to do with bringing down Trump. In November is the most. It is the. It's not as quiet around here as I thought it was. In November we're going to see... there's another one. So when it's raining the tyres make more noise, that's the thing. November is going to see the second most important presidential election in US history. The most important was 2016. And Trump is going to try and get re-elected, and the deep state are desperate to stop him. They're absolutely desperate to stop him, and they'll do anything. They tried impeachment, it didn't work. They tried this coronavirus, it didn't work. So what's next? Riots. It's riots, that's the only thing you can do. And that's, I think, was what all this is about. So, whether it will work or not, I don't know. I mean, at the moment, see, at the moment, I'm pleased to say that this has backfired. The public opinion is totally and utterly against what's happened here, and these horrible mobs have made themselves look like the rats that they are. They really have made themselves look like the absolute scumbags they are. And of course, Tommy Robinson is doing his own... Oh, God, he's doing his usual. He did a long 5-minute rant at the camera the other day, his usual sort of like... He did his usual sort of portrait in his car kind of thing, screaming and shouting, effing and blindness. They're destroying our statues, they're doing this and that. We're going to go down there next Saturday, bring all you guys, come down in London next Saturday, and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. This is exactly what the news media are waiting for. Lots of angry white men causing trouble. It's the perfect way of undoing the tide of public opinion, blocking that tide that we're having at the moment. It's a perfect way to just go along and be a complete arsehole, get drunk, throw police barriers around like those people I had to deal with when I got arrested in London last year. It's going to achieve nothing, and Robinson is an idiot. He's a fool. He's gone down in my estimations a lot lately, he really has. I used to give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean, the Panodrama thing was excellent, but what is he playing at? I know he's been investing people's money in frivolous projects about his own. He's made films about his friends rather than about the Rotherham scandal, things like that. So yeah, I mean, I do hope that people don't do that. I hope people don't turn up to cause trouble in London. I mean, statues can be repaired, they can be replaced. Nations can't. The world can't, the planet Earth can't, people can't, people killed can't be replaced. And this is literally a fight for freedom. This is the fight, we're fighting for planet Earth here, literally. This is a fight to save the world. And it can be undone by idiots behaving stupidly. Anyway. There's a lot more to be said on this subject, and I'll be saying more about it in a video I'll be making very soon. It's going to be a long one, so don't worry if you don't see it till the weekend, so don't worry. It'll be up hopefully around the weekend, if not just afterwards. Thanks for everyone who took part in the Marge live stream last night, and thank you for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, Pride and Dignity. Stop the New World Order.